Guys, listen, no, you don't understand. A lot of people that were growing up had their gateway anime. Either Pokemon, or Naruto, or Yu-Gi-Oh, or Bleach, Dragon, whatever. But when 2010 was rolling around, anime was starting to pick up steam in the mainstream. It wasn't quite niche anymore. And so when Soul Eater came out, it was around the same time the big wave of other hit anime like Vampire Knight and Black Butler and Nana, and I just so happen to have a video on all of those if you want to watch them. This was the time when maybe you were getting your friends or your siblings into anime. But Soul Eater was unique because it had such intense quality behind the animation, behind the tone, behind the music, that it had an iron grip on the minds of the people who watched it, myself included. You not only had the unique premise of people that can transform into weapons and you're trying to turn them into a scythe for the literal Grim Reaper, but this has one of the best soundtracks out of any anime I have ever watched. I listen to this soundtrack to this day. It is that good. The anime really leaned into appealing to spooky bits with its dark themes and creepy atmosphere that was kind of getting big along the time of like Hot Topic, the boom of Hot Topic, as well as contrasting it with like an urban hip hop aesthetic sometimes, both for the character designs and the soundtrack. The GOAT! The GOAT! I have a lot of things I've been wanting to talk about concerning Soul Eater. So buckle up, because just like that one kid that wouldn't shut up at middle school, this video is gonna be dense. Soul Eater was originally a manga series serialized in Gangan Comics, a monthly magazine that also published works that no one's ever heard of, like, I don't know, My Dress Up Darling, Toilet Bound Hanako-kun, the Kingdom Hearts manga, that one's a personal favorite of mine, and maybe a little thing called Full Metal Alchemist. Gangan Comics is owned by Square Enix, and the story of Soul Eater was created by Astushi Ohkubo, whom you may know as also being the creator of Fire Force, if that's like the only thing you've seen recently. His first manga was actually a little thing called the B-Ichi, which only lasted 4 volumes. Have I read it? No, no one has. Astushi Ohkubo is really strange because, to me, there's not a lot of work underneath Ohkubo's belt. Not counting the sparse manga and the illustrations he helped with that weren't his original work. He only has like 3 original series, that being B-Ichi, Soul Eater, and Fire Force. And hot take, his artwork hasn't gotten better. I'd argue the artwork in all 3 of his manga is kind of ugly. Now, usually a mangaka's artwork is rough in the beginning, and then as time goes on, as they are pumping out a chapter a month, it's kind of a crucible. They naturally get better over time when you're drawing all the time. That never happened in Soul Eater, at least the manga. I'm talking about the manga specifically. I mean, then years went by, and then he started releasing Fire Force, so I picked up Fire Force, and the artwork was basically the same, maybe marginally more refined, and you can argue that's just his art style. His art style is a little, I'm not gonna mince words, it looks kinda bad. I need to clarify something here. I'm specifically talking about the pages of the manga. His original illustrations, great. Honestly, gorgeous. I'm not saying he has lack of talent when it comes to being an illustrator. I'm saying that there are certain fundamental aspects of the manga and the line work and the readability of that artwork that is flawed. I was so upset at him not advancing as an artist that I refused to read Fire Force as like a protest. Now that being said, if you guys want me to cover Fire Force, I will cover Fire Force. I've heard good things about it. I'm willing to put aside my grief. And before I finish, I need to take off this jacket. This jacket is also not sponsored. It's from Anime Gear Guru. I just thought it was appropriate, but oh my God, I'm hot. I'm hot. Look at the back, hang on. Hang on, check this out. This is cool shit. Again, not sponsored. Look at the back. Look at that back. Hell yeah. I walk into hospitals wearing this thing just to remind all the old folks that their time is coming. So Astushi Ohkubo had cool ideas. He has cool ideas, but his artwork is something that I think I could do and I haven't drawn in years. Now, hot take aside, I want to do a deep dive into the Soul Eater anime and manga. The manga, if you're new to this channel, why haven't you subscribed? But I always do the manga in a separate video. Meaning, you see that the length of this video, this is all for the anime. And I want to cover the manga because the ending in the manga is different than the ending in Soul Eater. Yes, they did the whole Full Metal Alchemist problem, because this was during the time when that was just normal. They would catch up to the manga and they'd go, well, we're gonna keep making this show, screw you, we'll write our own story. That's no longer a practice people adhere to, thank goodness. And afterward, yes, I will cover the spin-off Soul Eater Not in its own video. I know. When you start any creative work, you need a strong hook. Now, exposition isn't usually a good way to hook your audience, but explaining the premise doesn't overstay its welcome. The most important thing you need to pay attention to is that this show is riddled with contrast. From the get-go, you see it in action.
It stands as a defense against the forces of evil.
Oh, well, that isn't important. For now, let's roll up our sleeves and get to work.
Going from a gruff narrator to Death having a funny voice is just one. But then we're immediately put into a horror scenario with a monstrous Jack the Ripper. Yes, that's Jack the Ripper. Though we had a whole exposition, we now get shown the actual premise. These people eating people's souls, which turn them into monsters. And this is the real hook. The woman below Jack the Ripper and Maka and Soul are even above Jack, showing who has the real power. Now we get treated to a phenomenal action sequence that took top-of-the-line talent to create. And in this freeze frame, we see the contrast between Jack the Ripper, with his limbs splayed chaotically around him, and the stoic and cool stance of Maka, showcasing their personalities and experience. Usually, animation studios will save this level of animation for the end of a season because it requires a large amount of the budget, but Bones and Aniplex were smart, knowing that it's better to start the show off with something so bombastic if it were going to stand out from the crowd. Not just the fight, but Maka and Soul are contrasting as well. Soul is focused on being relaxed, laid back, and cool. Maka is studious and well-mannered.
I'll freaking kill you.
See how cool I am? You think I'm gonna settle for a flat-chested girl like her?
What did you just say?
Okay, now let's catch up everyone who hasn't watched the anime. Soul, the white-haired scythe boy, needs to defeat and consume 99 Kishin souls and 1 witch soul in order to qualify as a death scythe. They think that they find a witch, that being this purple-haired girl, Blair. Now, immediately you see the sex appeal in this show. Funny enough, this sort of thing doesn't last long. The first 3 episodes have this goofy, sexy approach, but keep in mind that shonen anime and manga usually front-load sex appeal as a cheap trick to get their prepubescent audience hooked on the story, and then slowly wean out the sexiness. Naruto did the same thing with his sexy jutsu. The first episode's sequencing focuses on heavy contrast, what we thought would be an insanely serious show, with the opening scenes being a woman being murdered and a monster being assassinated, to a couple of kids having to deal with Soul not being able to fight because he's too turned on by Blair. Switching back to more action, there's actually not a lot of in-between with this show. It's either intense or goofy.
Is that dumb girl of yours giving you a hard time? Why don't you forget about her and come be mine? I would never ever yell at you like she is, no matter what you did to me.
Raise your hand if this show gave you a witch kink, and a goth girl kink, and a cat girl kink. Yeah, that's what I thought, Maka is openly a misandrist, primarily because her father cheated on her mom and just about every woman who came afterward. Soul was apparently the exception. This sequence of Soul choosing to side with Blair was not only meant to showcase Maka's character, but also establish the bond that Soul and Maka have, as Soul switching sides was a bluff to get Blair's defenses down. Episode 1 doesn't really progress the plot because it turns out Blair wasn't a witch, she's just a super powerful cat. Now they have to restart their collection of souls for some reason, and since cats have 9 lives, Blair is still alive to add more fan service to the show. What these first 3 episodes are really doing is showcasing the main cast of characters. Each episode dedicates time to a duo. First Soul and Maka, then Blackstar and Tsubaki, whom of which share similar personality traits as the previous. Blackstar doesn't so much want to be cool, more he's so overly confident that his ego causes him to jump into stupid scenarios. Tsubaki being a quiet and reserved partner who wants to get the job done right.
We're very sorry. Don't worry, boss. Until then, why don't you take this copy of my autograph?
Here we see not only Blackstar's personality, but also his character in this episode. He's sent on a mission to assassinate a witch, just like Soul and Maka in the last episode.
Tsubaki could probably partner up with anyone she wanted to.
He's not as much of a jerk as he seems. I'm sure Tsubaki knows that by now.
Oh yep, there's the sex appeal. Gotta make sure we get the tropes. This episode actually establishes a bit more than the previous, introducing the guardian of Witch Angela, Mifune. Very quickly, we see Blackstar is outclassed in every way and put in his place, as his headstrong nature only acts as a disservice to someone with discipline, and is easily defeated. But Mifune used the blunt side of the blade, as Mifune's creed is to protect kids.
The only reason that you've survived this fight for so long is her strength and intelligence. But no matter how good a weapon may be, it's wasted if an unskilled master is wielding it.
Blackstar is basically a trope as a character. He's the arrogant and loud main character type until he gets serious, where he's able to actually pull through and win, showcasing how skilled he really is. It's both what makes him annoying and also why I adore him, but more than that, I mentioned this episode showcases his character as well as his personality. When he finds out Angela is a child also, Mifune's motivations make sense. He said that he protects children, even witches. Blackstar would be able to let Tsubaki eat all the Kishin souls and kill a witch. He could make Tsubaki a death scythe right then and there, but he knows it's wrong, even echoing Mifune's sentiment. That's what makes me love Blackstar. Want more contrast? The genders and their roles are reversed between these 2 groups. Maka is the Meister, but Tsubaki is the weapon. Their genders and roles crisscross. With Death the Kid, the Grim Reaper's son, we immediately break the rules, establishing that you have to have a duo, but Kid decides to have 2 partners. His odd flaw is that he's so obsessed with symmetry that he's incapable of doing... Oh yeah, there's groping. I swear, there's not that much sex appeal when you really analyze it, I swear. Anyway, that's really the end of the sex appeal, please. Hopefully you guys could stomach the parts of this show that aged poorly. Kid is so obsessed with symmetry because he is asymmetrical.
You don't really need to be training weapons or reclaiming souls.
I want to make my own weapons to my own specifications.
I never really cared for Kid's OCD with symmetry. It's not funny and only serves to interrupt the plot rather than add comedy relief, and also somewhat trivializes people with actual OCD. When it comes to Liz and Patty, I think it's better to think of them both as a singular character as they function and grow simultaneously. Kid is very one note, and that, wow, this is a lot. No wonder so many people assumed all anime was hentai. Yeah, you see, the joke is that I talk as if I'm above the sex appeal, but you know, when I first watched this anime, the sex appeal effect definitely worked on me. I'm not gonna pretend like I'm above it. I've read some comments of people being like, dang, Negative, I didn't know you were that down bad. And my response is, where have you been this whole time? But you know, just be careful, because too much naughty online images, wink wink, and not enough touching grass turns people into incels. Anime girls may be sex objects, but real girls aren't. Weebs tend to get desensitized to that, and that's why they become incels. And then they get indoctrinated into the far right, because that is kind of like the MO. If they're sexually frustrated, they're willing to just be angry at women, which that's a whole conversation for a different video. As I was saying, Kid is very one note. His ability to perform hinges on whether or not he sees something as symmetrical. If he has too much respect for the enemy, then he'll let himself be beaten, which isn't really so much a character trait, but more of just a weakness that doesn't do much to contribute to his character at all. That being said, Kid does have the best theme music by far. Kid's introduction is the weakest out of all of them. So, what's the contrast between Kid and Liz and Patty? They actually don't touch on it in this episode, which is why his introduction is especially weak. But don't worry, I'll just tell you right now. Later on, they tell you that Kid is supposed to be born into a higher class, literally being a different specimen as he's not really human. He is part death. He's a Grim Reaper. Liz and Patty grew up poor on the streets, having to fight for everything they had. Kid never had to struggle in that way. You can think of them as the rich and the poor and the upper and the lower class working in tandem with each other to achieve something greater than they ever could alone. The real plot starts off with all of them having to do extra credit since they botched their jobs in the previous 3 episodes. This teacher, who got less than a minute of screen time, was turned into a zombie. Their goal is to investigate this guy.
If you become a zombie, then death no longer looms over you. You can escape from fear and be free.
Wow, that's a really cool premise. It's a shame they never really do much with that. This fight showcases how their personality reflects their fighting styles. Black Star wanting to go straight for the weak points and attacking with a frontal assault. Maka, on the other hand, working around her opponent, talking to her enemy in hopes of them seeing reason as well as keeping them at bay. This is also the introduction of the cool anime power of soul resonance. 2 souls matching wavelengths to grow the weapon's power. Think of it like Pacific Rim in their pilots. Black Star and Tsubaki work so well is because Tsubaki can transform into 3 different weapons. Black Star can also switch between being headstrong and a proper assassin. Their abilities to switch modes and fighting styles is why they complement each other so well. After beating Sid, they find Frankenstein, mostly just referred to as Stein, the person who turned Sid into a zombie. Stein, at least in this point of the story, serves to showcase and flesh out the abilities of Meisters, able to see people's souls and their characteristics, having the ability to analyze his opponents, giving Maka and Black Star a goal. Not only that, he's pointing out the flaws between these couple duos.
Ow, my face!
Your mother was a Meister and you're Spirit's little daughter, aren't you?
Speaking of which, in the anime and manga, we don't see Maka's mom. We only get a glimpse of her in Fire Force. Stein shows us how to attack with his soul directly, not needing to rely on a weapon to channel his power. And this sorta kinda somewhat foreshadows something that happens at the end of the anime, but not really, or at least laying down the foundations of what's to come.
You're about to need a new pair of glasses, bastard! You're not the only one who can use soul waves to attack without a weapon! Go big wave!
You know why they added that? Because Black Star is cool. There's not much other reason, but also, doesn't that make perfect sense? A bombastic attitude has to have a bombastic soul. This segment completes by Maka and Soul managing to hone their skills with soul resonance, acquiring the Witch Hunter. Stein was there under Death's orders to be the proctor on whether or not they passed their lesson. He was never actually a villain. I'm not crazy about the remedial lesson arc, but it does establish a lot of the rules when it comes to the magic system in this world. Oh yeah, Sid was in on it too. Stein becomes a major character later on in this show, and this was a solid way to introduce what kind of person he is. Oh yeah, he's also a teacher now. The major theme of Soul Eater is corruption. Humans who are corrupted by their desires turn into monsters, and Crona is the corruption of children, how parents putting forth their desires before their children's ultimately corrupts everyone. In case the audience wasn't certain if witches were actually a threat, especially after the first 3 episodes having witches be either not true witches or pitiful, Medusa and Crona are introduced early on to really showcase how bad witches can be. And I'm not talking about how Medusa is a baddie. Crona, being Medusa's child and is clearly apprehensive to kill others until Medusa uses her magic to influence her child to go on a rampage where Crona seemingly loses all sense of self and empathy.
I'm reading the souls of a Meister and a weapon, and both of them are directly in front of us, which means that Meister standing there has a weapon inside his body.
Crona is frail, recluse, and the first thing they do when showcasing Crona is to show how much pain they're in because their weapon being inside of Crona. Like, Crona is very clearly a victim of abuse. Their own weapon even bullies them. Crona, without the influence of Medusa, expresses that they don't want to hurt anyone, that they dislike fighting, and their entire worldview is incredibly small. The only real moral code they have is whatever Medusa says is okay and what isn't.
Anyway, she said it was okay to eat the human souls. I don't see what's wrong with it if she said it was okay.
Crona's blood being black not only tips us off to the abusive life they have suffered, but also to showcase that Crona can't fully be considered human anymore and is the linchpin to the major plot of the entire show. Crona's blood and mannerisms isn't really a reflection of Crona, but more a reflection of Medusa. If Stein dissecting and experimenting on people was uncomfortable, Medusa is what Stein would be without a moral alignment. Or even worse, with an evil morality that drives everything she does. Just to show the dichotomy of Medusa and Stein, they make sure to have Stein be the one to rescue Maka from Crona. Spirit, Maka's dad, is really there more as a joke, and because Stein and Spirit were past partners, and Spirit is not actually important to the show whatsoever in the end. Crona's reclusive nature is really a survival response to how Crona can't escape the abuse and bullying. And when abuse becomes your reality, the brain adapts in order to survive, that being keeping your head down, doing as you're told, don't speak out, and try not to be noticed. Crona is just the embodiment of tragedy.
The weapon's soul is clearly dominant. It rules over the Meister's more introverted soul, confining it.
If you ask me, I would argue that Ragnarok, Crona's weapon, can also be an analogy for like chronic pain, like something in your body that you just can't get rid of that's always trying to hurt you, but that's not really relevant to the plot. Soul has apparently gotten some of Crona's black blood inside of him during the fight. Now he's presumably cursed and has to fight a battle that no one else has really experienced. Maka blames herself for having Soul protect her, even though she was also trying to protect him.
Oh my goodness. Dr. Medusa.
Yup. That's Medusa the witch.
She pulled out a book!
Oh my goodness, she's reading Gangan. Like the magazine. I never actually noticed that when I first watched this show. So Kid and Blackstar learn about Excalibur and find out it's real. Now at first I loved Excalibur because of how they subvert our expectations. All the stories of Excalibur being difficult to pull out of the stone was a lie. Turns out Excalibur is so difficult to wield is actually because this weird worm penguin thing is just a neurotic nuisance. I can only assume that Excalibur is supposed to be the polar opposite of Ragnarok, both of which are incredibly difficult to wield for vastly different reasons. If Ragnarok is supposed to be the weapon of ultimate evil, then Excalibur should be the weapon of ultimate good. The only downside is that he's really only here to serve as more comedy relief. But beyond that, it reinforces the idea of resonance between a weapon and Meister. How relying on a weapon isn't the way to become truly strong.
Surprisingly enough, Excalibur can match with anyone.
Before becoming my Meister, there is a list of 1,000 provisions you must peruse.
The irony of Excalibur being able to resonate with anyone's soul, but incapable of resonating with any person, which is why Excalibur isn't really human. He's more the embodiment of hubris rather than anything else.
We've both got fine partners already, huh?
Tsubaki and Blackstar have an assignment to defeat the enchanted sword Masamune, who is close to becoming a Kishin.
You've come here to kill more people, haven't you?
You're a member of the Star Clan. Don't lie to us, boy.
What did you say?
Blackstar is from a group of assassins that turned themselves into Kishin in order to extort people for money. They've all been eradicated except Blackstar. Blackstar was a baby when the Death Weapon Meister Academy defeated his entire clan and took him into their tutelage. He's the last of his clan. Masamune is a sword that controls the user and slowly consumes their soul. Blackstar succeeds in pushing Masamune's control out of the person, and Tsubaki takes the opportunity to confront Masamune herself by going inside the sword.
Tsubaki.
Hi, brother.
The way this confrontation plays into Tsubaki and Blackstar's relationship is that they've developed enough trust with each other to where Blackstar trusts that Tsubaki will be able to handle this herself, that it's something that she needs and wants to do herself. If Blackstar were to fight Masamune, it would actually be selfish. Blackstar is showing respect to Tsubaki by standing back. Even if he's being beaten, he won't leave her side and leave her alone. Tsubaki's ability to transform into multiple weapons is a skill passed down by her clan, and Masamune was supposed to get that ability, but it was Tsubaki that inherited it, leading Masamune to thirst for power to make up for what he assumes to be his birthright. In history, Masamune was a blacksmith that created the most beautiful and well-crafted swords. The metals of his swords were abnormally pure compared to the other swords of the time. What makes this story so interesting is subverting our expectations again. Just like how they did with Excalibur, Masamune should be the one that's revered and beautiful, but isn't.
I am Tsubaki, a flower without fragrance. And when I fall, it will be silent and tragic.
Tsubaki carried this guilt about her birth and her brother that she's only now able to overcome thanks to her support from Blackstar. They hearken to the flower that she's named after not having a fragrance, which I always thought was an analogy of women and children often being seen and not heard, but only when she's able to speak up for herself and argue against her brother did she have the will to overpower her brother at all. All her guilt was just a projection of Masamune. She thought she was protecting Masamune by not saying how she felt, and all Masamune needed was for Tsubaki to be honest with him. She won by reconciling with her brother and growing as a woman as well as a weapon.
What's the point of worrying about the past? A real star always keeps moving forward.
Not the most poignant, but yeah, a good way to cap it off. Tsubaki can now transform into the enchanted sword, her soul now melding with her defeated brother. Soul has started to have bad dreams affected by the black blood, a sort of dream sequence where a little devil eggs him to push himself for more power and to put him outside of his comfort zone. And Soul doesn't like the idea of leaving the safety of the room because every time he does, he's coming out of Maka's chest. Now, we switch to focusing and fleshing out Medusa and the world of witches. Just to show how off the wall her experiments are, even the witches of her coven are trying to kill her. They don't want her to get caught at the DWMA because it would put all witches at risk, and they don't like Ragnarok because they're afraid it'll become a weapon that might attack witches. Of course, Medusa is too powerful for the other witches. Just to make the point obvious, Medusa is based on a snake, and the other two witches are a frog and a mouse, that of which is usually consumed by snakes.
I wouldn't be surprised if she was in the area observing the students here. I suppose it's even possible that she has managed to infiltrate the academy itself.
Stein, we know you. We know you know. You just like feeling smart.
Should be able to rest a bit now.
Ah, yes. That feels nice and cool on my foot. I could get used to this.
Raise your hand if this gave you a foot fetish. No? No one? Raise your hand if you already had a foot fetish. Yeah, that's what I thought.
I wish Medusa would step on me.
Who said that? Medusa forces Erica to break out a prisoner, a supposedly very powerful one. What I love is that the training arcs in Soul Eater aren't your typical shonen training arcs, since soul resonance is the source of their power and the relationship between a Meister and a weapon. Their training is pretty much therapy. They're in a chamber with candles that raise their emotions, forcing them to fight and get everything they feel out of their system. The prisoner, named Free, turns out to be the legendary Wolfman from Myth. He's not really important, actually. Don't know why they really wanted to include this. Maka is starting to feel the effects of their souls no longer being in sync. They're too busy fighting and arguing that one is right over the other, and that they can no longer defend themselves.
Shut your mouth, Maka! What are you even—
That is enough, you two! You have to work together if you want to do anything. One person can't make a decision without the other.
In order to reconcile his emotion, Soul decides to listen to the demon in his dreams and pursues the overwhelming power that he's been promising. which seems to be exactly what Medusa wants. Soul now has to fight the urge to consume Maka's soul. Medusa is actively trying to advance her research through Maka and Soul, continuing her MO for experimenting on children.
Is he still having that strange dream with the demon in it?
What dream? He told her about it and he didn't tell me? So basically, Soul feels he can trust Dr. Medusa more than he can trust his own partner.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the point of a doctor.
Are you helping because you're a doctor, or is it because you're a witch?
I love how forward Stein is. As you can assume, the DWMA has been looking into Medusa and trying to gather evidence of her being a witch. They're maintaining appearances because this is an incredibly fragile situation. If they get evidence, they can get a death warrant for Medusa. They don't know that Medusa now has several people working for her. Just when Sid had evidence, Erica gets rid of it. Medusa's big plan rolls out at the anniversary of the DWMA. Hold on. Yikes, really weird how they have like 3, 4, 5 black characters that aren't racist caricatures, but the background characters can be. This was weirdly normal around this time, and anime has since gotten better about this.
I take it the Kishin is what you're interested in. About the Kishin sleeping beneath the DWMA.
Miraculously, Sid is alive and warns everyone that today was the day Medusa was planning to start her plan. Death and all the teachers are in one place. Free summons a barrier that they can't leave. Sid manages to get all the main characters out before the force field trapped them because, you know, no one else matters.
Below the DWMA sleeps a Kishin, the source of all madness in the world.
In order to keep the Kishin sleeping safe and sound, my father cannot ever leave the academy.
The main enemy throughout this show, beyond the Kishin, is the idea of madness, fear, and what it will do to a person, how it obstructs a person's ability to really make connections with others, but they also make it a point to talk about how everyone needs fear. Without fear, you're reckless and willing to throw your life away over very little. Holding on to fear and controlling it is the mark of a great Meister. All the while, the Kishin is fear incarnate, a near Lovecraftian being that will inject fear into anyone that goes near it. When the Kishin is so adamant not to trust anyone, the only way to defeat him is to learn to wholly trust one another. His strength is putting walls up around his mind that it manifests into his own magic, and to counteract it, you have to be completely vulnerable to the point where even your souls touch. And you know, that's really poetic. What this show really does well is making 2 points. First, if you need to do something and you're scared, then do it scared. Don't wait for the fear to just go away. Second, the real cure for fear isn't bravery, the cure for fear is trust. And what makes this segment of the show so fun is that we get to see a gauntlet where it's a one-on-one battle between multiple different villains and characters. It's delivering on the tournament arc that we all love, but is doing it in a way that actually contributes to the plot, which just makes it a little bit more special. Revisiting the black blood demon inside Soul's mind, Maka and Soul and the demon have a conversation about whether or not they should accept the demon's help to grow stronger. They're both desperate, and Maka is actually considering accepting the demon's madness in order to win.
So this is madness.
What Maka is really trying to do, now that she's as mad as Crona, she can try to resonate with Crona's soul in order to reason and understand them. Her goal is to defeat Crona with compassion rather than fighting, something Crona has never experienced before.
Don't you know that the cornered rat will bite the cat?
Yeah, I lied. There's a lot of fan service in this show. It doesn't really stop. I'm sorry. Anyway, what I love is that what Maka is doing is literally just taking down the walls Crona has made in their mind in order for them to open up. And Crona's body starts rejecting itself, which, funny enough, can actually happen during the healing process. Some people have reported feeling sick when they start changing and healing and from their trauma. Maka utilized the black blood for her own gain, and Soul managed to get her out of the madness. Effectively, they've won. Maka then delivers by showing Crona that there isn't any danger. The only way Crona will ever develop trust and defeat the fear is if someone helps Crona. Now that Medusa doesn't want Crona anymore, there was nowhere for them to go, which actually means Maka had the perfect chance to break down Crona's walls. Oh look, another introvert being adopted by an extrovert. For all the extroverts out there who adopted an introvert, this is what it felt like. I hope you understand how impactful your actions were. Because it may be you just goofing around, but it's kind of life-changing for some introverts that are really struggling. So just letting you know, you guys did a great job. More introverts need to be adopted by extroverts. Now, I'm not saying being introverted is bad. I'm not saying they need to become extroverts, but I'm saying it's hard to make friends when you're introverted. Ragnarok is now small, and Crona finally managed to fight back. Like, wow, that's a lot of progress in just 30 minutes. A simple yet effective tactic for writing a compelling story is to make sure nothing goes according to plan. The Kishin Ashura was successfully revived. The DWMA failed. Medusa wins. Now, the real story begins and the stakes just got higher. Now, I wouldn't say what we've experienced up until this point could be considered gothic horror, but just for the sake of illustrating the point, we're now diverting away from gothic horror and marching straight into Lovecraftian and body horror, a more psychological approach to the enemy. The payoff of this entire arc is getting to see Ashura and Death fight. We haven't gotten to see how intimidating Death can really be. Now that there's nothing really keeping him at bay, he has the chance to show us what he can do. We get to see old magics fight on a massive scale. Of course, there needs to be a reason for Death to not be able to fight at his full power, that being he doesn't have a Death Scythe, and for some reason there's a barrier where Death's attacks can't penetrate. For what reason, I have no idea, and Ashura leaves to gather strength for the actual final battle, making the whole encounter anticlimactic. We haven't really seen how powerful Death really is. Death tells Sid to send a message to all the Death Scythes around the globe to come to his aid, so he always has a scythe so that he can actually fight.
Damn!
And now we get this guy in the story. Yay!
Great Lord, why will you not speak your magnificent words that I may hear them and swiftly obey?
Take out the earphones!
Okay, so when it comes to Justin and his holier-than-thou attitude, I do really like how he has earphones in all the time. The people who preach the gospel and the word of God are pretty much always deaf to the critique of the Bible. So Justin wearing earphones to block out anything other than what's going on in his mind and his own beliefs. It makes sense with that character. It makes sense with that thematic. It makes sense. Like, religious psychosis is its own form of madness. And Justin's character is supposed to be a caricature of that. They even go so far as to they know Justin can read lips. He knows what you're saying, even if he has earbuds in. So he can understand what other people are saying, and he chooses to pretend like he's not hearing you. And he only talks back when it works for him, like the willful ignorance of the religious zealotry that of which currently plagues this country. Now, I may, and by that I mean I definitely, am letting my personal bias dictate how I am interpreting this. So, if you have your own interpretation of Justin, go ahead and leave it in the comments below, because I can at least very well see my own fault. I need an outside perspective. I mean, there's other Death Scythe characters that answered the call that aren't insufferable, like Justin. So at least there's that.
I've decided I'm going to marry this toilet.
Oh, maybe I spoke too soon. And now things just go back to normal, I guess. I always thought this was weird. You'd think a massive battle would break out right then and there, but nothing happens. Crona is now locked up under the DWMA after giving themselves up. Even though we're having to wait before we can really fight Ashura, the madness wavelengths that he's emitting is going to empower new villains that we get to enjoy for a couple dozen episodes. You may be thinking that having the main cast do regular activities is to reset the tone, but I think beyond that, even when everything is terrible and a looming threat is underway, people have a tendency to live life regardless. It's really beautiful. Even when war is breaking out, the laundry still needs to get done. Even when there's danger, kids need a childhood.
I thought Maka was looking for normalcy!
Papa?
Oh, he vomited. When I first watched this episode when I was younger, I thought he crapped his pants given the placement of the censor. The bite Medusa gave Stein is exacerbating the madness that's growing inside him. Not only is Ashura's madness taking an effect, but Medusa's mimetic powers are now egging him on. Oh, I've been forgetting to do the title cards. Death decides to enroll Crona into the academy. Crona's biggest struggle is really dealing with the instilled agoraphobia, and the only person that Crona has any amount of trust in is Maka, meaning that she has to step up to the plate to help. We're slowly trying to incorporate Crona as part of the main crew now that they're going to use Crona to help fight Ashura and the upcoming rise of witches. Crona is sent on their first mission to the Czech Republic with Maka and Soul. Business is back to normal pretty much. I always felt this was odd. I feel like they need to go straight to hunting down Ashura or finding information on him, but instead we're going back to how things were before. I know they're just kids, but this is also an anime and that's never stopped literally any other stories before. I understand they want to work up to Ashura and work on fleshing out the new character arcs with Stein and Crona, but we're not aware to what Death is doing to try to find Ashura, and that irks me the most.
I've taken good care of it.
I've managed to get this close with Crona's help.
Sir, that is a child.
Damn it.
What's this? It's thread.
It sure doesn't sound like a thread. Here we're introducing a sort of mini-boss for the series. It seems to be a major interest with the author to flesh out the world around. Wow, holy crap, move over, Medusa.
The mother of magic weapons. She was responsible for bringing these creations into the world.
Oh, she's the mother of magic weapons? Gotcha. It makes sense why she's a goth mommy. It's for plot reasons. I gotcha. I gotta admit, if it felt weird that we aren't focusing on Ashura, you definitely caught my attention with this new villain. You know, maybe I'm okay with seeing where this goes. Arachne is also the older sister of Medusa, meaning she's Crona's aunt, making this a lot more difficult for Crona than we were expecting. You know how they say, if you want to show how evil someone is, you have them target the helpless, specifically children and animals? We're capitalizing on both for Medusa's slow and eventual return. Medusa, now in the form of a snake, inhabited the body of a girl named Rachel. The show is starting to seriously incorporate religious imagery and reference to God. The purpose behind it, I actually can't tell. It feels the most shoehorned, incorporated for nothing else than because the philosophy behind fear and trust seems to have run its course, but supplementing it with a half-baked notion that religion is somehow connected to the story only serves to weaken the narrative. Thankfully, the concept of soul resonance isn't entirely abandoned. If two people can achieve soul resonance, then more than two can also.
Just try it.
Oh, hey, I can do that too. Just, not with my nose. Medusa is now a player in this story again, completely stealing the little girl and her body, which is on brand for her. She goes straight to her older sister, the one who currently holds the most power.
I fought the Grim Reaper 800 years ago, until at the very end of the battle, someone betrayed me. You think you can just drop in here and leave again without paying a price?
Oh, okay. That's vague. They never really expand on that either. Then she just leaves.
You'll continue surveillance as instructed, is that understood?
Yes, ma'am.
A new focus on the show is this wizard Eibon, and the magical artifacts left behind around the world. Arachne wants the artifacts to further whatever plan she has, and of course there's some old conspiracy between this wizard and death. Once again, Kid is slowly uncovering his father's past. Eibon is a fictional character in the extended Lovecraftian mythos, originally a sorcerer in Clark Ashton Smith's stories, originally appearing in the Door to Saturn. This was during the 1930s when pulp fiction was booming. Eibon isn't actually a historical sorcerer. Right when Crona was actually starting to make friends and feel welcome is exactly when Medusa comes back into their life. She wants to enlist Crona and start manipulating again. Now taking a new approach as pretending to care for Crona and pull on the strings of needing motherly love. And she's willing to supply it if Crona acts as a spy. Crona, as with any abuse victim, basically relapses and falls back into place once the abuser returns. Did you know, listen, you don't understand. The brain can interpret stress and anger like a drug. Your brain can literally be addicted to the chemicals that it releases during heightened emotional states. People with acute stress disorders are actively working against their own brains, because the brain will take things that should be a minor stress, a minor inconvenience, and it makes it into a major stress, because that's the only way it'll get the chemicals that it's addicted to. It's the same reason why people with anger issues seem to flip their lid at like everything that shouldn't be a big deal, because their brain is making everything a big deal so that it can get that chemical release that it's addicted to. That's why anger issues exist. It's the same thing with stress.
Afford to slow this lesson down for any one team. Any team who still cannot resonate souls by the end of today will be dropped from my class.
You hear that? You get one episode for your training arc. We're not wasting time with this. One friendship speech later and team resonance is achieved. Moving on to actual plot, Arachnaphobia and the DWMA are after another one of Eibon's artifacts that they know as Baru. Do we know what it does? No, but it's enough for a full-scale battle with both the teachers and the students there to retrieve it. Going through the magnetic storm during the battle, they actually end up in the past, or like an echo of the past, conveniently at a location that Death visited when he was younger. Of course, it's right now that the madness takes over Stein, making him a liability. Also, that's Eibon, just so you know. Cool design, a bit over-designed. I feel bad for the animators, but still cool. The things that made both the plot and the characters interesting are pretty much gone now, supplemented with a mystery of Eibon and Death's past. Kid's soul symmetry thing is practically abandoned. Soul's black blood is still looming, but he seems to have it in check right now. Black Star is already really strong, and there's not really much more he needs to improve. They hint at Black Star having to confront something with the enchanted sword, so there's something for both Soul and Black Star. Kid has nothing going for him since he didn't really have anything going for him in the first place. The themes of fear, trust, friendship, everything that gave the show substance aren't present anymore. It makes this arc very difficult to watch, and the mysteries they're laying down aren't interesting enough to keep it interesting. The most interesting thing happening now is whatever Medusa is planning.
Don't cry, Marie. The failure of the mission, any harm that comes to the students, everything. It's all my fault.
I thought Stein going mad would have him start attacking his allies, or, actually make him some sort of a threat, maybe a wild card, but it just makes him useless, which is significantly worse. If you ask me, they actually do a really bad job exploring exactly what madness is in this world, especially when the only person seemingly affected by the madness is one Soul, that one time with Maka, and primarily Stein. The madness almost seems like an afterthought. And if madness is supposedly supposed to get rid of your fear, why are we not seeing that in Stein right now?
You think you're such smart little children. Can you even tell me what this magic tool inside my hat does? Of course you can't.
Neither can I, which is why I'm having a hard time watching this show. The demon inside Soul finally wins, getting Soul to play the piano while they do team resonance, utilizing the black blood to make all 7 of them stronger. Harkening back to the beginning, Maka combines Soul's song with her witch hunter technique to elevate it to Genie Hunter, allowing them to defeat Arachne's second in command.
Sneaky old man. He was able to get away from us. He detached his head from his body and took off.
Really? What? That makes all that just happened feel shallow. You know, you remember how I started this whole video talking about like contrast and how Soul Eater focuses on contrast? You notice how that's not really present in the story anymore? And you notice how the story isn't really that good anymore? What? Brew doesn't work? Dang, what a bummer. Oh wait, Medusa actually switched out the real magic artifact Brew with a fake? Now Medusa has Brew, still wish I knew what it did. We finally get a glimpse into what Arachne's plan is. She's setting up moral manipulators around the world in order to influence the masses.
He's finally here.
That city, I made it.
Dang, you got a buckle to show where you want a BJ? But is the cup for where you want that BJ to end up? I feel like this is Syndrome wearing a big BS for babysitter, but you don't care. You actually went through with it. Crona, having helped turn Stein insane. Hi, this is post-Negative Legend. I totally forgot to explain how Crona helped make Stein insane. Crona, like, put something in his drink to expedite the madness process and Medusa told Crona to do it. I'm sorry, I'm bad at making videos, is now being called back to Medusa and to leave the DWMA, except Crona now has something to lose. Crona has friends now. You know, Crona's position is actually wonderful. Crona didn't have any reason to stand up to Medusa because Crona didn't have anything other than Medusa. But now there is an avenue outside of Medusa. It gives the possibility that Crona might resist her. Arachne managed to find Ashura and goes straight to him to try to convince him to join her side. Obviously, Ashura isn't all too keen on helping her given that he is afraid of literally everything. Fun fact. H.P. Lovecraft wrote the Cthulhu mythos because he was also painfully afraid of everything. He was xenophobic, he was afraid of ocean life, he was afraid of air conditioners. He used that fear to inspire his writing. Or some people claim that his quote-unquote fears were just more tongue-in-cheek jokes in his letters that people took too literally, but that's irrelevant. It's the concept of being afraid of everything that is the clear inspiration behind Ashura. I'm just really glad Ashura doesn't own a cat. Crona leaves, abandoning his friends and going back to his abuser. When it comes to victims of abuse, they're usually in a constant fight or flight mode, and in order to avoid being hurt, they usually fall in line and succumb to the will of the abuser, even going so far as to go back to them. This is sadly very typical. It's a backwards logic for survival.
I don't think so. I'm not going back to Medusa.
Huh?
I can't stay at the academy, and I can't go home. I just want to be alone.
You know, I think that's actually growth. Thankfully, Crona is found, and since they're all away from in a neutral zone, Crona manages to open up about how they've been working for Medusa again and how they're responsible for Stein going insane. Maka, thankfully, argues that Crona is still the victim because they are...
Please stop this. You're hurting my friend and I can't take it. It was Medusa who made you do it. You didn't want to, did you? Well, please tell me I'm right.
Do I need to explain the obvious metaphor of Crona being stuck in a hole and Maka going into Crona's hole to help get them out? I could have worded that better.
New Keishan friend's been given the best bedroom we had available.
He's like a dog being introduced to its new owner for the first time.
Is this just a metaphor, or are you into pet play? Medusa, now not having true control over Crona, surrenders to the DWMA. Instead of just killing her, they lock her up, which is the stupidest thing they could have done. Did you guys ever think how it's ironic how Medusa in Greek mythology was horribly abused and is a victim, but Medusa in this show is the abuser and creates victims? Oh, well, that aligns with the whole contrast argument I've been going for. I just didn't realize that until right now. I'm not as smart as I thought I was. Her goal isn't actually Crona, but is actually Stein. Now we're seeing her true plan fall into place. Medusa gives brew to the DWMA as a sign of trust. She proposes a trade where if Medusa tells them Ashura's location, she gets the protection of the DWMA. Speaking of Ashura, apparently all he really needed was some dommy mommy cuddles to keep him tame. Me too, buddy. Me too. Then they activate their moral manipulators utilizing Ashura's madness. She plans to spread his madness across the globe Bluetooth style at the perfect time for Medusa to use it as leverage. And so they accept her proposal. They thought they had to worry about Crona when really they needed to worry about Stein. Now he's gone, the true motive behind Medusa's gambit. Wanting to make recompense, Crona offers to go after Stein and bring him home. Marie is rightfully pissed, and she doesn't trust Crona. Marie was taking care of Stein this entire time, so she's coming with him. Stein, all the while, is somewhere he doesn't even know. He's wandering around in his own mind and can't properly interpret the world around him.
It's all right, Ashura. I'll be by your side, watching over you and protecting you.
That's a lot of clothes thrown around. This is definitely a sex thing.
Oh no, Ashura wears several layers of clothes and it signifies how comfortable he's getting with Arachne.
Yeah, I bet he's getting real comfortable. Quick turnaround time, the DWMA manufactured madness suppressant pills, which is mentioned only this one time and is not mentioned again. I thought this would be like one of those things where they gotta like regularly take pills and then, oh no, I ran out of pills. Oh no, I'm slowly succumbing to the madness to create tension. No, wrong. Don't bother with this at all, whatever. The DWMA launches their own assault on Arachnaphobia. Now that they know the location of Ashura is with Arachne, Maka decides, you know, I get Ashura is important, but I'ma go after Crona, and I guess Stein by default.
At least we can leave.
If his soul wasn't bound to Death City, Lord Death would have been the first one on that battlefield, fighting the Kishin.
Wait, why? I thought he was staying there to keep Ashura hidden. Now Ashura isn't there. Why does Death need to stay there anymore? Kid seems to only be good for retrieving more of Ibon's magic devices.
Make certain you have the will to use the magic tool you now possess. For those who are not qualified, there will be no glory, only destruction.
And this has nothing to do with the plot. You'd think there'd be someone unworthy using the tools. There isn't.
I need to put an end to this.
But do you really understand what that means? Before this is all over, you may have to kill your own mother.
Have you met her? Sometimes people deserve to die. I don't care if it's someone's mom. That bitch is crazy. Crona manages to track down and confront Medusa. Out of all the battles going on, this is the one I'm most excited for. I want Medusa to eat shit so bad. They did such a good job making Medusa so hateable. Sadly, Crona gets their ass kicked. Luckily, Maka swoops in just in time.
We can't injure the body she's inhabiting. We would be hurting a little girl named Rachel, too.
No one from the DWMA is allowed to.
I don't give a damn!
Thank you! That's what I'm talking about. That's why I love Maka. The only way you win the game is by not playing it. Nothing gets the blood boiling like some freeform jazz.
No!
Crona sacrifices himself in order to save Maka. Oh gosh, that looks like it'll take more than some Neosporin to fix. I love the trope of when a character gets so angry, they just go apeshit. Maka says, you know what, maybe madness is okay. Maybe I want to use it.
What if I want them to try?
Then Marie pulls out some bullshit healing powers. That came from nowhere, might I add. They didn't talk about how she can do that prior to right now. Stein's madness arc was unsatisfying because they didn't know what to do in order to resolve it in a satisfying way. So she just went, boop, you're better now.
It's faint, but I still feel the presence of his soul. I promise you, I won't let Crona die here.
Why am I not surprised? Using the power of this bitch needs to die, Maka activates Genie Hunter and repels Medusa out of the little girl's body, successfully destroying Medusa once and for all.
Stab wound Crona took is very deep, but he should make a full recovery.
The stab wound Crona suffered only penetrated their whole body and lost gallons of blood, the likes of which no person could ever recover for. But Crona will be all right because we said so. Listen, I want you to listen to me very carefully. I'm not someone that usually harps on plot armor. The whole argument of plot armor is usually pretty dumb. I mean, these are main characters. Of course they have plot armor. There would not be a plot without them. But when you're impaled by an attack that you shouldn't come back from, and you make a full recovery because you just can, because that's plot armor. And I know Marie has the BS, ooh, I can heal you thing. They didn't specifically say that she used that on Crona, so I'm going to assume they didn't. Even Stein was like, I can hear a faint trace of Crona's soul. No, they're still alive. Like, come on. Really? That's bad writing. In significantly less important news, Black Star finally gets a rematch with the samurai Mifune. The personal struggle of Black Star has been pretty lackluster. They're trying to make it seem like he's fighting between carving his own path or following the path of the evil Star Clan like his dad. If you ask me, I don't think he even deserves the title of Star. I mean, it took Firestar several books and trials before getting that name, but I guess the rules work differently here. All that's really been happening is that Black Star is butthurt that he keeps losing and he keeps having temper tantrums. His big struggle is that he's not used to losing, so he's off his game, and he needs to defeat Mifune in order to get over it. They pretend like this whole time it's been Black Star slowly giving in to the demon that is the Star Clan, but it just never really delivered. It wasn't properly foreshadowed to me. I could be wrong on this. I'm willing to acknowledge that. Time for some magic tool answers. The last magic tool is actually Eibon himself, who won't really play a big role in the story because they messed up the ending a little. Eibon used to be part of Death's old squadron fighting alongside Ashura. Eibon was creating magic tools to help preserve peace until he became obsessed with creating a method of immortality. Thus, his most powerful artifacts were created.
Eibon and Arachne joined forces. They combined his research into immortality with her research on magic weapons.
Then Mifune uses his patented impact frame attack, and Black Star is dead. More importantly, they activate Brew, which apparently you attune to it, and it takes the form of the user's greatest desire. Yes, I've gotten Brew, finally! Oiled up femboys, come to me! Death's greatest desire is to literally turn all of Death City into a massive mech so that he can join the fight against Ashura. Now, you see, Black Star somehow coming back to life makes sense because he had the enchanted sword and it was necessary for him to be close to death in order to choose to fight for all the fallen soldiers who succumbed to the enchanted sword before him. It was his decision to fight for someone else rather than for himself that unlocked the rightful powers of the sword. Maybe it's magic hullabaloo, but it's satisfying because it ties directly back to him fighting for Tsubaki. It reestablishes who Black Star really is. He doesn't choose the path of the warrior or the demon, he chose the path of the Avenger. Oh, you think your big battle mech is so cool? Well, guess what? We've been collecting magic artifacts of ultimate power just so we can have our own mech. We probably could have made a weapon that was more powerful or something, but that would make all this way easier for us, but that wouldn't be as cool. Everyone loves giant mech fights. A well-placed poke and they scoop away Ashura. Do we finally get that bombastic ultimate showdown between Death and Ashura now that Death has his scythe and can fight at full power? I feel like the coolness factor of this battle is heavily limited by the design of Death. He's just a blob. It's hard to make a blob look dynamic.
Why don't we have a little chat about the past instead?
No! Ashura starts talking about elementary pseudo-philosophy that's really disappointing. They want him to sound like he's a deep and complicated villain, but he doesn't actually have any truly complex philosophy. This fight is so underwhelming that it's actually insulting. The fight between Maka and Jack the Ripper, Heck, Maka and Blair was better than this. So he keeps saying imagination is what makes people afraid. The possibilities we imagine are often worse than reality, a lot like the reason you don't show the monster in the monster movie, because what we imagine the monster to be is usually a lot scarier than whatever the makeup designers can make. And his genius takeaway from this is
quite simple. I have decided not to imagine anymore.
Spoken like a true edgelord. That being said, it does make sense. The point of Ashura is that he's so scared of everything, he basically denies living. In a sense, he is the ultimate example of being pathetic. Living sucks, but he's so afraid of pursuing anything, he chooses to pursue nothing. He has no goal, he has no motive, he has nothing that drives him other than his own delusion. He's so out of touch with reality that he thinks reality is the problem instead of himself. The point of Ashura is that he is the most pathetic villain. However, that means he is still a pathetic villain. Ashura attacks Kid, Death stops the blast, and now Death is too weak to fight. What happened to you being able to absorb his blasts like it was nothing? Ashura said he was weakened by his love. What a fool. Oh no, I forgot I love a goth dommy mommy. That means I'm weak too. And yeah, that's how Arachne dies. He's scared of making himself better. He'll even kill the spider witch babe. Time for Ashura to go into his second form, health bar refilled. All main character coons jump into the madness bubble. They were all doing so well until the black blood finally manages to consume Soul. Freeform Jazz doesn't have anything on this. Now Soul is dying. Maka goes into Soul's, Soul. Sorry, it's a little confusing. Kid holds the front line as he powers up his ultimate and he dies. Then he gets better because they thought it would be cool, I guess. Now his hair stripes start connecting because it's part of his power. He has become fully symmetrical. Pretty sure they're doing this just because Kid didn't really have a big ending moment to cap off his non-existent character arc. So they said, let's just give him a cool moment and call it good. Then he faints and that's it. Ashura isn't dead. Skipping all the parts that really don't matter, Maka manages to save Soul with her power of friendship and stuff because their bond is stronger than the black blood, I think. I'm doing guesswork here. I feel like they're really just making stuff up as they go along.
You're getting rid of me, aren't you?
You're still a part of me after all. And so...
Great. First cat girls, then feet, now we have vor. I didn't ask if you were into that. They're fine, but Kid and Black Star failed because of course they did. Even bigger Scythe Blade, Genie Hunter, lame. Now it's Kishin Hunter, which doesn't work. We're just doing the whole Super Saiyan thing, but like worse. Now, this is the part that really divided the fan base. Maka takes a hit in order to save Soul. Somehow she stands back up and now she's oddly powerful. How might you ask? It's because she is a weapon. She's apparently been a weapon this whole time and has also been a Meister. Nobody has been both Meister and weapon in one. At this stage, Maka is actually unconscious. She's staying unconscious in order to not feel fear. That way she has some advantage against Ashura. Some people thought that was stupid. I thought it was awesome. Maka was really the only one of the main characters who didn't have a thing. Even with the black blood, that was really Soul's thing. I feel like Maka being an excellent Meister because she's also a weapon, allowing her to understand her weapon better than anyone else, would make a lot of sense to me. But instead of that being the thing that actually allows her to win, Crona tells them her real strength is the ability to heal others, the ability to empathize. Just like how she reached a hand out to Crona, so too does she reach a hand out to Ashura.
Maka's strength, it's more. It's bravery.
Oh, okay, I was wrong. I liked my thing better. The message that I think they're going for is that bravery only exists because of fear. You fight in spite of fear, not because you don't have fear. That is true bravery. So long as Ashura exists, so long as fear exists, Maka's power will hold strong, and Maka is specifically not special because everyone can overcome their fear, meaning anyone can defeat Ashura. Circling back to Ashura being the ultimate example of what being pathetic truly is, Ashura's power is specifically the one thing that any person in the world can defeat, allowing Maka to deliver a final blow, shattering Ashura as well as his reality. Only now was Ashura able to understand that he's wrong. That's what truly led to his demise. Madness and fear will be ever present, just like our ability to overcome our fears. That's what makes us truly human. Now, the ending of Soul Eater isn't what happened at all in the manga. It's one of those notorious anime that caught up to the manga and then made their own ending and just kept going without the manga. And so now we have this. Several people are upset by that, and rightfully so, but I actually like the ending of the anime. Is it clunky? Yes. I'm not gonna pretend it isn't. But they did manage to wrap up all the loose ends. I'd argue the message at the end was a poignant one. Ironically, it's poignant in the fact that it isn't poignant, which that's something that's not very easy to do. It took the annoying anime cliche and turned it into something that's actually inspirational. And now here's the real hot take. Now, it's been a long time since I've read the manga, and I don't fully remember all the details of the ending in the manga, so my opinion may change when I make the follow-up video to this and I cover the entirety of the manga. But from what I remember when I finished the manga, I liked the ending of the anime better. Now again, my opinion may change. My opinion may change. Hold your tomatoes. My opinion may change. So subscribe to watch that video when it comes out. Tell me in the comments below stuff about Soul Eater that you liked. I didn't prepare an engagement question here. Have you subscribed, please? Please? I'm begging. And if you just so happen to be one of the MILFs that slide into my DMs and so happen to be a dom, I'm very good at begging. But that's everything I have for you. I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for the next episode of Soul Eater, and then the episode after that of Soul Eater Not, and then the episode of, I think I'm just gonna combine Soul Eater Not and the Soul Eater Not manga into one video because it's really short. But yeah, stay beautiful and keep playing. I almost forgot my sign off. I'm losing my touch. I need to stop improvising. This is, oof.